A tall young man came to us with this unusual problem on the second toe of only one foot. He has this kind of difficulty. He has already removed this corn several times. Yes, this scary growth is a corn, but it doesn't just appear there for no reason, so you can remove it an endless number of times, just like he did. But the problem won't be solved. So today, the video is about how we send the client to a surgeon. Of course, we did everything first, just as we should. We're going to trim it now, make an incision, find where it ends, and everything will be fine, but this corn will definitely come back, meaning it will keep repeating in a cycle. And now I'll explain why this happens. Well, at least in this particular case, the corn appears because of the congenital feature of his toe. His second toe on the right foot is hammer-shaped, meaning it's longer than the others and slightly bent downward. And let's remember, yes, that he is quite tall and his 2 feet are a bit different from each other. And apparently he still has this. And the push-off leg or the supporting leg, whatever it's correctly called in general, the leg a person usually relies on, so it's called the supporting leg. I think I said everything correctly. And naturally, it turns out that in shoes, in absolutely any shoes, no matter how he chooses them, he still ends up with increased pressure. That is, all calluses always happen only because there is constant excessive pressure on a certain point. That's exactly what happens to him. That's why he removes, cleans, cauterizes, and does various procedures to them. And this callus keeps coming back and will keep coming back even after our super magical cleanings. I said that in quotes, I think you got it. And here it was decided to recommend that this young man see a surgeon to correct his toe. I don't really know what this operation is called in surgical or scientific terms, but some measures need to be taken to correct the shape of the toe so that it doesn't rub anymore. Indeed, any podiatrist would be powerless in this situation. We can endlessly make offloading devices. We can even suggest, for example, buying 2 pairs of shoes at once, one in his true size and another with extra room, and fix it there. But, all of this will be very difficult, and probably in this situation it really would be easier and more logical to consult a surgeon. Well, and for those who aren't listening and are just enjoying watching the picking, at least give us a like. I think that right now you paid attention to me. Well, we'll continue here. A logical question that arises here is how exactly to carry out such cleanups, and why hasn't blood been spilled yet? By the way, he also had this question, why wasn't blood gushing everywhere after we cut off such a big chunk? The thing is, as pathologists, we actually don't work with any living tissues. We always work only with dried specimens. And a callus is actually compressed old dry skin cells, which we calmly cut off with special clippers. And nothing will happen to us for that. In fact, nothing will happen to anyone for that. Of course, as long as you know and understand where and how you can cut something. In case you don't know this, I advise you to turn to specialists like podologists. After all, I get a lot of requests and messages like, help, what's wrong with my toe? What can I do at home? Most often my answer to such a question is nothing. Just like this young man, he also can't handle it at home because he doesn't have the special tools, and of course he doesn't have the skills. It's been 5 minutes already, and Aliona is still digging. As you can see, almost half a finger has already been cut off here, but nothing terrible has happened so far. This will actually continue. For such cleanings, we use both cutting tools and so-called rotary tools, which are rotating burrs. In short, in our way, in Russian, in a normal way, that's why we'll be sewing, cutting, grinding, and doing everything else. By the way, pay attention to the nail. It has also already deformed and has a changed structure. We can't definitively say if there's an infection present. Visually, such conclusions are not made in order to understand if there is anything at the junction. Mushrooms, specifically fly agarics. Of course, you need to take a sample for analysis, take it to the laboratory, and their smart people who do such research will handle it. We will get a report that will say yes or no, and if yes, then which ones. This is another reason you must get tested. Knowing if you have infections or fungi is not enough. It's important to know which, for example, types of fungal spores you have, so that the dermatologist can prescribe the right medication for you. Because just smearing on, pouring or soaking yourself in whatever those clueless people advertised on television was start like Megadaril, Exodaril, and all those other Daril products without thinking isn't the right approach. This can often be dangerous, and in fact a lot of people end up with burns from this, meaning it can actually cause burnt skin. Of course it takes a long time to heal and it's definitely not good. So please be careful and take care of yourself, and don't try to treat yourself, especially when it comes to an ingrown toenail. Because this is just some kind of disaster in my direct messages, guys. 6 minutes, 58 seconds, and the corn is still not gone. I didn't cut anything out on purpose, so that it's clear how many manipulations are actually being done. Usually when I'm editing, I cut something out and everyone thinks, oh, how fast, oh, how simple, oh, how easy. So why do your podology services cost so much and are so expensive? Actually, it's always work. It's just that when you're catching micro pieces, we call them millimeters, because everything is really tiny, but here everything is greatly magnified. Sometimes we even film under macro, but unfortunately when it's live work, when we're just working with clients, it's not possible to film in macro mode. As a rule, if it's macro, then it means... And I sat down and got really stressed out because there's a lot of work, but there's very, very little space for us to work. But sometimes I try to treat you with these little goodies. Now, those who are watching from the beginning have noticed that the shape of the fingertip cushion is starting to change, and we're seeing a big dent. By the way, all the leftovers, and while she's finishing up the tape. Now we're taking, by the way, a carbide burr, which can also be used on the skin if, of course, the skin is this dry. Len sawed for a while and decided that he could cut something else there. In general, regarding changing the shape of the pad itself, actually, in all cases, really in others, when offloading is applied and shoes are changed, we remove the constant pressure from this area. The core corn disappears after cleaning and the skin restores its shape. But here, as I mentioned above, nothing will change because there is an anatomical feature. The toes and the nail, the toe, they are deformed and only a surgeon can help us here. Additionally, we also clean the nail a little. It needs to be made a bit thinner, of course. It is also keratotic and in the end it looks shorter. It's as if we cut it off. Oh my, that's terrible. Am I really going to say that? Well, anyway, you get what I mean, right? You know what it was cut with. Of course, it looks scary, but at least it won't hurt him now. He has been given all the recommendations. He was referred to a surgeon. Fortunately, there are specialists. Despite my so-called disdainful attitude toward doctors, I truly believe that there are those who are gifted by God, and those who really do their work well and conscientiously, not just cutting something off a person. That's all I have to say. There's no real ending to the video. What you see is what you get. Share your opinion. What do you think about these kinds of conditions? Maybe you've even seen something like this somewhere. I'm curious.